the whole thing about like getting downloads at the start. Well, if somebody subscribes to your show at the start and you have one episode, then you get one download for that one subscriber. However, if someone subscribes to your show at the start and you have 4 episodes or 5 episodes, that counts as 4 or 5 downloads. So you're exponentially, like hugely exponentially increasing your download numbers right at the start, which will have an even better chance of you getting into the new Noteworthy. And plus, we launch our clients with 4 episodes anyways, because when you start a show, ideally you want to start with enough content that it's sort of like bingeable right away. Welcome back to Oh My Pod. I'm Justin.
And I'm Celine.
And today we are going to be talking about how to get your podcast into Apple's new and Noteworthy category. And also, if you're watching, or maybe you can hear it in the recording as well, but we're in person today because sometimes it's fun to switch it up. And there's a very different vibe between doing your show like virtually and doing it in person. And Celine and I usually just like sit in opposite rooms. And so we were tired of our long distance podcast relationship. So now we're going to do a few episodes in person because why not? We have the gear for it. It's a bit more complicated to set up, but if you have the gear for it, it's good to switch it up sometimes.
Yep. And we're not even using any mic stands.
Yeah, we're being bad podcasters.
We are. We're just holding our microphones in our hands.
We're seriously being bad podcasters.
Yeah,
I would never recommend doing what we're doing
this.
Because honestly, like I have a lot of mic experience from being a performer, so like the mic is super natural for me, but I can look over at Celine and see like sometimes the mic starts like drifting farther away from her mouth and then it comes back and that's like, I mean, that's what happens. Like it's annoying to hold your mic because you ideally want it at the same distance the whole time, right?
Exactly.
So whatever.
I'm sorry, Micah, audio editor, he's going to be mad, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, he's always getting mad at us.
Yeah.
No, not really. So we'll get into the tips though. This is an upper level podcaster problem. It's not like if you're an indie podcaster who's starting a show on a super low budget. It's not like you're going to be shooting for this because it does take some elements that need to be very well produced, sometimes overproduced. Your visuals need to be on point. Apple's essentially not going to feature anything that doesn't look and sound great because they don't want something on their front page that poorly represents their platform. So that's something you have to think about. But we're not going to make this episode too long. We're kind of going to go through them pretty quick, and we'll hop into it with the first tip, which is you should have an audience before even starting your podcast if you're wanting to get into the new and Noteworthy. So the reason for that is when you start your show, you're going to want an influx of downloads. You're going to want to show Apple that there's some type of hype around your show launching. And the only way you're going to do that is by having some type of audience for the show beforehand. So if you're really ambitious and you have no audience, you could try to just build up the hype of your show using whatever strategies that you can find and research. Or if you're somebody who already has an audience, and there's lots of people like that. I mean, imagine if like, I don't know, I can't think of anybody. Imagine if a famous person, like really famous actor or actress, like Brad Pitt started a podcast or something. So obviously if Brad Pitt starts a podcast, he's going to come with a massive audience. He'll get like 100,000 downloads on the first episode, probably more. And he's going to pop up on that new Noteworthy page instantly because of that, because there's so much hype around that. But even if you're not like a mainstream celebrity, if you have like, 20K, 30K on Instagram and you start a show, well, maybe you can get 500 people of your audience to come over onto your podcast. And if you start with 500 downloads on your first episodes, then you're going to have a really good chance of getting up there. So we're just reading our notes on our iPad here as well. So the second one, Celine?
I was going to actually not do the second one right now because what really ties into with what you just said is that, well, obviously, if you are a person starting a podcast that is of public interest, so you're already famous, like actually famous, then Apple will put you into new and Noteworthy, I think, no matter what.
Exactly.
You can reach out personally, or, I mean, if you're that famous that Apple just knows that you're starting a podcast, then you probably don't have to reach out.
Exactly.
But the same goes
like Brad Pitt level.
For if you are able, or if you have a friend or somebody that you know that is actually of public interest and that is a huge deal in whatever industry you're starting to podcast in, then you can actually fill out a form on Apple. We can link it into show notes, and actually ask them to put you into New and Noteworthy. So like, and they will, because if you can get a huge person on, they will want to feature you. So that's definitely a thing. And also if it's like, okay, it does not need to be Hailey Bieber, but like if it's like even somebody that's like famous-ish or has a big following on social media, that will be enough to get you in there. Yeah. So I think that really ties in. Bring somebody big on right at the start. And if you can, bring multiple people on, because you don't want to be starting out with just one episode in the bank when you launch it. And especially if you want to get into the New and Noteworthy, you want to start out with 4 episodes, maybe more, but we would recommend 4. So if you can get multiple people in those 4 episodes that are like of public interest, or at least in your niche of interest, then you will make it in there for sure. Like those 2 things, I would say, are huge tips.
And the other reason why you would want to start with multiple episodes is because the whole thing about like getting downloads at the start, well, if somebody subscribes to your show at the start and you have 1 episode, then you get 1 download for that 1 subscriber. However, if someone subscribes to your show at the start and you have 4 episodes or 5 episodes, that counts as 4 or 5 downloads. So you're hugely exponentially increasing your download numbers right at the start, which will have an even better chance of you getting into the New Noteworthy. And plus, we launch our clients with 4 episodes anyways, because when you start a show, ideally you want to start with enough content that it's sort of like bingeable right away. And if somebody goes to your show and they see you have 1 episode, well, after they listen to that 1 episode, there's nothing more. But if you give them 4, then they might be more inclined to start actually making a commitment to your show, listening to the first 4, because after they've listened to the first 4, maybe the next week episode will already be out. So starting with 4 is already a good plan. But I also mentioned it, so that I guess that was tip like 1 and 2 and 3. So
and 4
and 4, I guess. We'll figure out how many it is after. But the next one would be that you need to have really high quality content. So that means top-notch production, great music, like a good vibe to the show.
Maybe don't hold your mic in your hand.
Don't hold your mic in your hand and sit on a couch in your living room to record, that type of thing. But also having really good visuals as well. So not just audio production, but like, could you imagine a world in which Apple would actually feature something on their front page that has like really unattractive artwork? No, it's not going to happen. So you should have the pieces in place before you even launch your show so that it looks perfect and sounds perfect. And that's where we're talking about, maybe this is not maybe the best idea for an indie podcaster doing it all themselves, because that's not something that you should be aiming for as an indie podcaster, to get everything completely perfect. But when you work with a team, or you have a podcast producer that's dedicated, like a dedicated producer for your show, then having all the elements perfect is a really good idea. What else did you say?
So encourage people to review and rate your show. So I definitely think that's a big deal, because the reviews do add up to getting you higher up in the New and Noteworthy. That being said, you don't need a ton of reviews to make the New and Noteworthy. Like, don't think that. Like, there's shows on there that have 10 or 20 reviews. Like, you don't need 100 reviews to make it in there. That's a total misconception. But encouraging people to interact with your show in whatever way that is, subscribing, downloading, or reviewing, that will make a really big difference, and it all adds up. So definitely, as your like CTA, just send them to the reviews, especially in those first few episodes, if you really are trying to get into the New and Noteworthy.
Yeah, totally. The next one would be to be active on social media with your podcast. So that would be sharing updates, sharing posts about it, just making some kind of sort of like showcase of your show. Like it makes your show more legit to have stuff on social media, to have a website for your show, all these different things, like showcasing that you are, that your show is more than just you sitting in front of a mic and just kind of riffing about random stuff. Like, give it some legitimacy with being active on social media and engaging with people who follow the account, answering questions, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think we're already at the last one, at our last tip.
Yeah, because we already said to reach out to Apple. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We already kind of like
jumped ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Jumped ahead. So the last one would be to have some kind of launch strategy. And that just means, so basically the new Noteworthy is less likely to feature you if you get a peak download one day, like tons of downloads on a Monday when you release, but then you don't get any downloads on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So what we would recommend is promote your new podcast on different platforms every day of the week. Like, for example, on Instagram, hype it up on Monday. On Tuesday, you hype it up on Facebook. On Wednesday, you hype it up on LinkedIn or your email list or whatever it may be, TikTok. And just try to like stretch those downloads over a period of time, because a lot of downloads, which quote unquote a lot, whatever that means in your case, constant downloads will give you a way better chance to get in there than a ton of downloads on one single day. So definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, so sort of like a re-promotion strategy of the one episode.
Yes, on different places. Like, for example, just what I said, right? With your...
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's it from us on this topic.
There's a bit more as we're looking at our notes here. Usually what we do is we write a big page of notes, and then we do a bunch of research, and we only talk about the things on the actual podcast episode that we highlight. And there's probably about 50% of the stuff on this page is not highlighted, which means that it will end up in the blog post of this episode. Yep. So if you do want to know more about this, I think we have we have 17 points altogether here, and only about half are highlighted. So there'll be a bunch more info on the blog post, which we will link in the show notes. And as always, if you have any questions about this, about anything, about podcasting in general, you just want to say hi to us. Or if you have ideas for future episodes that you would like us to do, like questions that you want answered on episodes, whatever, then send us an email at ohmypod@podigypodcast.com. And I think that's it for us.
Yep, that's it.
We've got lots of great guests lined up for the future. Oh, yeah. So share this show with anybody who's doing their own podcast, who you think could use some type of improvement or some guidance or just a bit of support. This is a good show for them. We're trying to really help people here. Before you go, I'd like to mention two things. First of all, if you enjoyed the show, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This really helps a ton. Second, if you want us to produce your podcasts or want to inquire about Podigy's services, or if you have any questions that you'd like to see answered on the show, please send us an email at ohmypod@podigypodcasts.com.